Yo, what's up guys, my name is Free Flight Guy here, and today I'm going to be doing a full, very basic tutorial on FSX. This for very new people who basically just got it. Don't worry about this is just a weather add-on that I like to have. It's free. It's called FSX WX, but don't worry about that. Later on, when you get a bit more experience with the planes, you can then decide if you want to buy or get some free or add-ons. So first, when you load up into FSX, everything will be set as a default here. So here you have your current aircraft you can change to, and there's a little picture there of some add-on aircraft. Now before you get starting going into these big jets and all that, and you might be going woo, you won't know a thing what's going on. So I suggest you start in one of these Cessnas. Okay. Run. And then if you click no, it's just for this session. Okay, so we have our plane. Looks nice. We're gonna change where our location is. So I suggest going to an airport that you know of. You might know well, or one that's closer to you. So for my case, it would be Harden. And you can search for it up here or by the airport ID. You don't have to know the ID yet, but yeah. And for time, I'm gonna reset to the time on my computer. It's just easier, you don't have to keep flicking through these numbers. If you just click this reset button here, it sets the time to your computer. Okay. Now, for the location at the airport, here, you can select which gate you spawn at. It'll be defaulted to spawn you at the active runway, but if you don't know which gate's which, you can spawn at just pick a random one. If you do, if you'd like to cycle through them, see which one's the best for your aircraft. See, for example, the ramp GA small. GA means general aviation, which is the small planes. So I'm going to select that. And that's basically where you're going to spawn in the plane. So let's press fly now. And it will load like this. It may take a while. And you might notice things look a bit different on my sim because I have a few add-ons, again, that you can get off different websites. Yeah, and I have this. Let's change the weather. Don't worry about what I'm doing right now. Okay. So it'll spawn you in with the engine on and the beacon light on. Let's just move. Oop. If you press Y, you can move the plane without actually using the engines. You can just, it's called slew mode. You can move around. If you press Y and use the arrow keys to move. Let's just get here. Okay. Now, usually you spawn with the engine on, so I'm going to turn that off by pressing Control Shift F1. And what that does is pull this red thing here, which is the mixture, which is the fuel, and it basically cuts the fuel to the engine. Now, also this beacon light will be on, which is that little rotating red light thing. I've turned it off now. And so this is the main panel. If you press Shift 1, it'll bring that up. You can, this is the virtual cockpit. If you right click, you can go to different views, like outside. I have it on virtual cockpit. If you want to have it just in cockpit, it'll just be this, and if you press Shift 1, it'll bring up this, and Shift 2 brings up the radios, 3 brings up the navigation, 4 brings that up again. Yeah, it's different in different aircraft, as you can see there. It shows you what it is. But I like using the virtual cockpit because it's 3D, isn't it? So over here is like, sort of like the keys in a car. They're called magnetos, and basically they're two sort of batteries or starters for to start the engine. There's a left one and a right one, and usually I either have it on both or off, and you push it all the way over to start the engines. These here are the battery switches, the master battery switches, and the alternators. If I press that, you might notice there's a little whining sound turning off. That's the fans. And here is the avionics. That powers these. They're called buses. Basically for the radios and the navigation. It doesn't show up because we've turned the main batteries off, so we can turn that off. Here's the panel lighting, doesn't work at daytime. And here's the throttle, which makes it go forward. And this is the mixture, which controls how much fuel is going to the engine, if I'm right. Or the fuel-air mixture. Here you have the fuel selector to select the left tank, the right tank. Usually I have it on both. So yeah, so you want to go flying because you don't want to just be stuck on the wet ground. So the first thing you do is turn it on. And actually, you can follow a checklist. If you press Shift F10, it brings up this bar, and if you go over to checklists, you can see before starting the engine. Sometimes it won't be very detailed, like this one is quite detailed, but you can use it to help you start the engine and set the aircraft up, but I'm just going to do it manually. So I've turned the batteries on now. I'm going to put the magnetos to both on, and I'm going to turn the avionics on. Now I'm going to press the apostrophe key, which brings up this. This is the air traffic control menu that you can speak to air traffic control to request takeoff or landing or IFR flight plans or VFR flight plans or circuits, which we'll get to later. I like to keep it small in the corner so you don't have to. So the first option will be to tune to the ground air traffic control for the airport, and this number here is the frequency that will be in your radios. You can tune this manually, but there's two radios. There's COM1 and COM2, and these up here select which ones if you're transmitting to one. If you select both, you can listen to one but transmit on the other one. So yeah. So I'm gonna click this. and I'm gonna request taxi to remain in pattern. Actually, yeah.
Howard and ground, Cessna, November 52 Kilo Alpha, ready to taxi, touch and go.
Usually you would be. So.
Hold short of runway 23, using taxiway November. Contact tower on 124.905 when ready. Taxiing hold
You
short
have to
runway
acknowledge that.
23, using taxiway November. Cessna 2 Kilo Alpha.
Okay, usually you would be getting the requesting flight plans, but we don't have one today, so we're just gonna do that. We are cleared to taxi now. I can hide that and press S to change views. And I've turned on progressive taxi, which shows you where to go, basically. And let's get on to turning the engine on. So, first you want to put the throttle up a bit, at least to 15%, and put this red mixture to full. This means all the fuel is going into the engine. Now if I go to here and move the magnetos over to start, it will start the engine, like so. There we go. And to speed that process up as well, you can turn on this fuel pump, but you don't need it. It just pumps fuel faster into the engine, I think. Okay, now the engine's on, we need to let everyone who's around know that our engine's on, and by that we can do that by turning on some lights. So the beacon light is that flashing light, it's more like a caution sign, and we're gonna turn on navigation lights and navigation and taxi lights on because we're about to taxi. So you can throttle up using F3 and F2. I have a controller. You can plug in your Xbox controller, and on it it's Y and B, and you can use the joystick to move the things around, and the LT and RB to move the pedals. So let's taxi. So you can press Shift P to push back, to request a vehicle to push you back. You'll notice that there aren't any vehicles here because it doesn't model it because there aren't any at this airport. So it is pushing us back now. Usually larger aircraft required to push back. Smaller aircraft don't really need to, but I'm just showing off this feature. So I'm throttling up now. Now we can taxi, which means basically drive to the runway. I feel dumb by saying drive, but some people are stupid. On the ground, to turn, we use the pedals that controls both the wheel and the tail, the vertical stabilizer on the tail. When I pull back on the stick and push forward on the stick or the yoke, that makes this thing go up and down. That's the horizontal stabilizer. Now if I'm in the air and I wanted to turn, I would usually sorry about that, guys, my microphone fell out. So yeah, as I was saying, if I wanted to roll the aircraft to bank right, I would push left and right on the stick, and that makes the ailerons move up and down on alternate wings. So we are approaching the runway now, and when you get to the runway, you stop usually before this yellow line to get clearance to take off. So now we would turn on our landing lights and turn off our beacon lights, turn off our taxi lights and turn on strobe lights. That's basically the takeoff configuration for the lights. Yeah, no. So you'll see that red light on the back has stopped flashing now. And we are cleared for takeoff, so we can press F7 to bring down one notch of flaps. And gonna push the throttle halfway and then all the way. And when we take off, we need to try and stay on the center line. And that's enough speed, we can take off. Usually in airliners, you would now say V1, rotate. Not now, but when back there. And then V2, gear up and press G. But this aircraft doesn't have retractable landing gear, so yeah, we don't need to do that. So now we have requested a touch and go, so that means we need to circle around and land back at the airport. Let's gain some altitude here and raise our flaps. Not very good day for flying, is it? But there you go. Every day's a good day for flying. So now we are going to turn either left or right to circle back around. I'm going to turn right. Now you don't want to use the rudders in the air unless you want to stable the aircraft, which is, you see that little black ball there? When I move the rudder to the left, it should move to the right. But the rudders don't have much effect on this aircraft, so It should move to the right, and you can use your rudders to stabilize that. Now we are flying straight, and you notice that we are still climbing, so if this is our vertical speed, so how fast we're going up or down, this is our attitude indicator, which is the angle of how much up you are, or how much up you are, how what your angle is, in terms of the horizon. So if you want to keep it in the center to fly straight. Now we are on the upwind for the runway, which means we are flying the opposite direction which you take off and land. So a touch and go means we land but don't stop on the runway. We keep going and take off again. Let's slow down here. Slow down quite a bit. And we should see the runway soon. There it is. Now those four white lights mean we're too high. So you want to have 2 red and 2 white to have the perfect approach onto the runway. So we are going to descend. And we're going to turn back to align ourselves with the runway. And we're going to lower some flaps. Lower some more. Now flaps do slow us down, but it also increases our lift on the wings. You see we have slowed down now. I'm going to lower the last notch of flaps, so the flaps are now fully down, as you can see there. And like I said, 2 red and 2 white means it's basically guiding us to land where those 2 white marks are. That's our aiming point where we need to land. Let's go a bit higher and increase our speed here. Yeah, there we go. We're back. Sometimes that might go out of your view there, the runway, so just bear that in mind and try to remember where the runway is in relation to your aircraft. See, we are now quite high, but we are quite slow as well. There we go. Now we put our flaps to halfway and let's take off again. So that was a touch and go. Where we did not stop on the runway, but we kept going. It's a bit turbulent. Let's turn left this time. Let's raise our flaps so we can go faster. But that means we have to pull up more because there's less lift on the wings. Less lift on the wings. Let's level out here. So, we are getting closer to the runway now. I'm gonna request a full stop landing. So that left downwind means we are flying, I think, going, because we're gonna go down the runway. So let's slow down a bit. Lower a notch flaps. Again, we are still high, so let's reduce our speed so we can descend a bit faster. turning does increase our rate of descent because there's less lift on the wings. Let's lower some more flaps now. There we go. Sorry about that. I had to move my mic. I'm going to trim the aircraft, which means I don't have to pull back as much, but it makes the aircraft pitch up without me having to pull back. Okay, we will. And now let's press the brakes to slow down. Just gently tap the brakes. There we go. I'm supposed to follow these yellow lines here, but I am. Let's raise our flaps, and let's contact ground. So we don't have to use progressive taxi. The way you do it is in the real world. Just look at these yellow signs. See, it said Golf Juliet November. There's Golf in the black, and Juliet, which will be the next taxiway. November's down there, so we can turn right here. So that we are off the runway, you would usually do this, like straight after you exit the runway. You turn off your landing lights and strobe lights, and turn on taxi lights and beacon lights. Taxi lights would illuminate some part of this in front of us, but FSX doesn't model that. Just take a while to taxi. We do have a speed limit for taxiing, which is I think 30 knots, but sometimes it's even better to go slower than that, because there are some sharp turns here in the taxiway. Actually, where do we need to? Yeah, we need to go over there. So. And these T marks on the ground show where you park. So that's here. And now we can switch off our lights and our engine. You can switch off the engine for numerous of ways, like turning this to off or pulling the mixture. I like to pull the mixture because it's cool. And also let's turn off the avionics, the beacons and the batteries. We can even press Shift E to open the door. There we go. So that is it for today, guys. I will be doing another tutorial on, I think, navigation, and we'll basically just work up the, get harder and harder and more advanced as we go. I used all default air traffic control and default aircraft, so you don't need any add-ons to do what we did today.